Hello everyone, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. My name's Revner and I like to play games, and today we're going to be talking about the Elegy for the End, and whether or not you should summon for it for your Venti or other support characters. As you're probably aware by now, this weapon was specifically designed with Venti in mind, so that he could be an even better support character. However, since it's on the limited weapon banner, and the weapon banner is notorious for not being worth it, I wanted to quickly go over what my personal thoughts are on this weapon since I managed to get it in 40 pulls. To be completely honest, I was just going towards the first 5-star and seeing if I got lucky, and I did. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have kept going. However, since the RNG god smiled upon me, I decided it would probably be best for me to review the weapon in full so that you guys can get a better idea for whether you want to pull or not. Alright, and now that we have all that out of the way, let's quickly look over Venti's stats using the Elegy for the End. So, as you can see, we do get an additional 60% elemental mastery, and when we trigger its effect, we get an additional 20% attack. But where we're starting out, we have 1956 attack, 43% crit rate, 148% crit damage, 225% energy recharge, and 61.6% animo bonus damage. I'm currently using a 4-piece Viridescent set for Venti because I think that this is his best in slot set, because it increases his swirl damage by 60%, as well as debuffing any element that gets infused within his swirl. Venti is currently at Constellation 2, and his talent levels are currently sitting at 588. For this particular part of the showcase, I'm going to be using Klee, Ganyu, and Hu Tao. Take note of their original elemental mastery and stats because they will increase once Venti uses the Elegy for the End. So luckily there actually is a visual indicator for when the Elegy of the End's effect takes place. Little blue markers will start to appear around Venti every time that his elemental skill or burst hits the enemy. And once it hits 4 times, you'll start to see a harp shape in front of Venti, meaning that the buff is now up. There are also visual indicators next to each of the characters showing that the buff is now active. And now if we quickly go back into the character menu, you'll see that they did receive their 20% attack buff, as well as a flat 100% elemental mastery buff. This is the main selling point of the Elegy for the End, having this team-wide buff, and why people originally thought that this was going to be one of the best weapons in the game. But let's see if it actually holds up to what people originally thought. So let's quickly do a quick damage test just using Klee and Venti first, and then we'll move on to using Ganyu and Hu Tao at the end. I want to do this test first because I want to see what the damage is for the Elegy of the End just using Venti primarily, as well as I did want to see just how good the energy recharge is on this weapon. And after a quick test, I could say that the damage is pretty good, but it's nothing too amazing. This is definitely a support weapon and will pale in comparison to the Skyward Harp in terms of damage output from Venti alone. And the energy recharge is nice, but it isn't as much as I thought it was going to be. But like I said, this is a support weapon, and so we should actually test it in the full context of a team and see just how much damage it does there. So I use Klee to take down the cryo regisvine, then use Venti in order to apply the debuff to Pyro, use Ganyu to apply cryo, and then use Hu Tao to take it down. And the result was 395,000 damage. And you know what? I actually was pretty impressed by this. Roughly 400,000 damage is nothing to sneeze at. However, I couldn't really help but wonder how it compared to his other best in slot, the Skyward Harp. Is it really worth pulling if you already have the Skyward Harp instead? So I quickly equipped the Skyward Harp to see just how well they do side by side. Now keep in mind that my Skyward Harp is Refinement Rank 2, so it will be doing a little bit more damage than the standard R1 Skyward Harp. But I still think that it's important to test it anyway. So what I immediately noticed was that I was right, the Skyward Harp was doing more damage on his just regular swirl attacks. The crit rate and crit damage that you get from the Skyward Harp is just going to make it do more damage in general, at least in regards to Venti's damage independent of his team. However, as soon as the team comes into play and elemental mastery comes into play, the Elegy of the End does take the cake. However, by much less than I originally thought. And while big numbers are nice, when they're both so big that you one-shot it, does it really matter anyway? I don't know, I think that's just something that you'd have to decide for yourself. But I also wanted to test this weapon where Venti's strengths actually lie, which is fighting groups of small enemies. So I took on the Viridescent dungeon, and it went extremely well, it went extremely fast, and the elemental mastery buff did help. But ultimately I think that you could still do just as well using the Stringless, the Favonius bow, the Skyward Harp, the Amos bow, any bow. The fact of the matter is that Venti is good just because he's Venti and because of his ability. And while the team-wide buff is nice, it's not always necessary, especially if you're already doing a lot of damage. However, if you are struggling, then this might be a good weapon for you because it'll give you a team-wide buff. But it really just seems like overkill to people that already have a lot of damage on their hands. However, I do have to say that I think that this weapon best performed in Spiral Abyss, and especially in floor 11 where a lot of people are having a lot of difficulty just because of the Electro debuff, which takes away your energy and bursts more often. By having so much energy recharge on your main weapon and support weapon, you're able to bring up Venti's burst way more often as well as support your team. And I have to admit, it's really nice. It's a really nice quality of life and will definitely help you clear Spiral Abyss. But I also think that it's really important to realize that Spiral Abyss tends to change periodically, and so we're not always going to have this debuff to worry about, although I do think that this will be an evergreen support item because it will just be handy in any situation. The real question is whether you're going to find this weapon extremely useful to you and whether you think the buff is actually worth it. Me personally, I don't think that this weapon is worth pulling for, and I think that the weapon banner in general this time is not worth pulling for. In fact, I actually hate the weapon banner. I've talked about it in previous videos. And although I do think that this is Venti's best in slot support weapon, I just think looking back that saving these weapons for 1.5 and 1.6 when we're going to be getting new characters would be a lot smarter. There are already so many bows that work well on Venti that you can just use them instead. I think that this is mainly a weapon for whales and people that want to min-max their accounts, because I feel as though free-to-play players really shouldn't be focusing on this and should be focusing on other weapons in the future and characters in the future, because I think that they're going to be far more valuable to your account overall. I think that I'm incredibly lucky that I managed to pull it in 40 pulls, because I know from past weapon banners people have sunk hundreds to thousands of dollars into this game and not gotten the weapon that they wanted. And I think that this weapon especially is not worth it. Especially when you consider that Sucrose with Thrilling Tales can essentially do the exact same thing. Thrilling Tales is only a 3-star weapon and at max refinement can actually give a 48% attack boost to the next character that comes onto the field after the equipped character. And Sucrose is able to give part of her elemental mastery to the entire team once you unlock her first passive. And although I don't think that Sucrose is as strong as a character as Venti, I feel as though Sucrose is wildly looked over. And I think that people will come to realize this if they decide to build both Venti and Sucrose if they have them. What I'm trying to get at is that there are other options in order to get this buff, and you don't need this weapon in order to achieve it. It's just really nice, and it basically makes Venti and Sucrose at the same time. Another big issue that I do have with this weapon in particular is that it is tailor-made for Venti. While the Homa was tailor-made for Hu Tao, it's also still extremely good on Zhongli, as well as Xiao. And while you can use the Elegy of the End on other support characters like Fischl, Diona, Amber, or even Ganyu if you're running her as support, I just don't think that it's nearly as valuable. If the Elegy of the End had a substat that was different than energy recharge, for example crit rate, crit damage, or honestly even attack, I think that it would be far more valuable. The fact of the matter is that you can get energy recharged from substats from your artifact rolls, and there's currently no characters besides Mona that actually scales with energy recharge specifically. And although Venti does do well with energy recharge, if you want him to be doing more damage, you actually want to be focusing on crit rate, crit damage, and attack. All in all, I think it's ultimately going to come down to your own personal preference and choice, and if you want this weapon, then go for it, but I personally wouldn't recommend doing it if you are tight on primos. But I at least hope that me going over it and building it and showcasing it will give you a better idea of what you personally want to do for you and your account. Alright guys, that's all for now. I've probably talked your ears off for a few minutes, but I appreciate it if you've made it this far. Also, I want to quickly say thank you guys so much for 2,000 subscribers. That happened not too long ago. and I'm really stoked and really happy, so thanks so much for supporting me, guys. I really appreciate it. If my account ends up growing into a larger account with your help, then that means that I would be able to dedicate more time to this channel, as well as summon more often with the revenue from YouTube, meaning that I'll be able to make more guides, more character reviews, and weapon reviews. So if you like what I had to say, if you like my channel in general, then feel free to like and comment down below. It really helps push me into the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe. Make sure to hit that notification button because my upload schedule is a little bit erratic, so if you don't want to miss a video, make sure to hit that button. That's all for now, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Alright, best wishes. Bye.